I think from the outset, policies that look to readdress such issues are bound to fail, because economic growth is not generated by large government decisions such as this, such as affirmative action. If you want to encourage economic growth in your society, you have to make business easy for your citizens. If you want to encourage especially Black development, you need to educate and encourage Black folk to do business with each other, with other people, to trade internationally, to start their own companies, and to empower them to get jobs. If you try and force a situation like you have done in South Africa, it creates racial tension, number one, but it also doesn't work. And we've seen this with the statistics. Black unemployment has unfortunately increased over the last few years in South Africa, despite BEE being in place. And we've seen, as the government tried to increase its efforts, we went from BEE to BBEE, and further, the unemployment rates increased. If we're really going to tackle the issue, we need to look at the core reason for the issue, which is education and ease of business. If the government wants to readdress inequality, it needs to make South Africa conducive to good business. So that's my opening statement. Thanks, Donald.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Sorry, I don't know how this happened, but somehow I didn't go live when I made the introduction. So just quickly again, Mark, but don't worry, we got your opening statement. Mark is a Vryheidsfront Plus councillor in Tshwane, and Musuli Kama is an ANC provincial parliamentarian in the Western Cape. So it seems to me, Musuli, I might be wrong, but it seems to me the summary of Mark's statement is trying to force it is the wrong way to approach this, by all means.
No, thanks, Donald, and thanks to Mark for that opening remarks. Look, I think, Donald, we need to ensure that we don't talk about affirmative action as a new phenomenon or policy. It's not new. In actual fact, from the late 40s, when the National Party took over, there was a program of affirmative action where we saw, in the period from the late 40s to, I think, the periods of 1976, where we saw policies that were created to ensure that Afrikaners at the time were being aided by government and be part of the mainstream economy and compete with the English. And you would see that if you check the stats, because I was reading the book by I think it's Herman Guillaume and Lawrence, where it says from apartheid to nation building. In that, they speak about how in senior positions these have changed and ensured that
it seems like Musuli has some connectivity issues. So I don't even know how to present that opinion to further this argument. So let's hope it can reconnect. Okay. Let's see it as this way, Mark, as we're here. Do you see inequality as a problem? A person like Dawie Rood, who we've recently interviewed, he said, why do we care about inequality? As long as there's rising living standards, what does it matter the level of inequality between the rich and the poor? Why does it matter? As long as everyone keeps on rising. So affirmative action is sort of seen as a idea to redress inequality. But David Roth says, who cares? Who gives a shit? I mean, as long as everyone keeps improving living standards, what does it matter?
Well, I'll answer that. But first, I just want to comment on what my opponent had said earlier. And he made references back to the old apartheid regime. So to me, that's an economic or a policy that failed as well. The apartheid regime fell just as this regime will fall as well. So if we're going to look back, economic policies that benefit certain groups will ultimately fail. But to answer your current question, look, from a government point of view, you want as many people paying tax as possible to get the most income for your government. It's beneficial for any government to increase the living standards of the poorest citizens in your country or in your city, and as in my case. So although I wouldn't encourage affirmative action policies, I would try and make the situation as suitable as possible for our citizens to uplift themselves. I wouldn't say I don't care about upliftment, like Davy Rood has said. As long as things are growing, it doesn't matter. I don't quite agree with that. I think we should do what we can to help the poorest of the poor uplift themselves into the middle class.
And yeah, Masuli, sorry, it seems like you disconnected, but Mark also said there he doesn't agree even with the policies of apartheid, which I don't think is controversial. But probably everyone agrees with that. Go ahead, Masuli.
No. Thank you. I think the point that one was trying to make is that it was a system that was meant to uplift. I don't know what Mark would suggest, because apartheid was a system that segregated a certain people for a long period of time. So I don't know what he would suggest when we have to redress. What should be government's role if it should not to look at those who were previously disadvantaged and try to assist them. I agree with what he's saying around ensuring that the business grows, that people are competent, people are trained, and all those things. But what should be government's role if it is not going to directly intervene? Because the Constitution of the Republic that we all adopted, it says it recognizes in its preamble, it recognizes the injustices of the past, and it says we're all committing ourselves to heal the wounds of the past and ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to participate in the economy. And affirmative action in the context of Black affirmative action post 1994 has ensured that we in different levels of government and certain companies have Black people that are found in senior positions, and we must not make a mistake that they are put there because they are Black. Firstly, they meet the necessary requirements and all of that, and then it becomes a secondary consideration to say that how do we then ensure that we use the very same opportunity to address the imbalances of the past. So that's the context that within which I'm raising this, because even at the time of those policies when your Afrikaners used the affirmative action, there was a deliberate effort from government to ensure that those who are in farming, 80% of them received funding, they received different aids from government. So government must continue to do that and create that enabling environment for business.
You muted yourself, Masuli.
about that. Sorry about that. I'm saying so government has that responsibility to ensure that it plays its role so that we address the imbalances of the past, and we must be deliberate about that.
Mark?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. Role of government. I think the basic role of government, and this is a strong ideology of mine, the basic role of government is to provide basic services to its people. As soon as a government starts getting involved in trying to shape its society, it's getting into dangerous territory. So the apartheid government made this mistake as well, where they started out providing services to their people, as all governments do, and then they got involved in segregation laws, benefiting some groups over another. And even that system is not conducive to traditional, or let's say organic economic growth. The apartheid system pretty much limited economic growth to one small group of the population. Now that's not very good for business. If you want to be a prosperous nation, you would want the bulk of your citizens to prosper. But in order for your citizens to prosper, you need to have a society and an economy that's conducive to prosperity. It's the role of the government to provide basic governmental services, to pass laws and legislations, but to provide basic services to the people, water, sanitation. And this is done, and electricity, and this is done on the most local level. But I think as soon as the government starts meddling in race laws, you start losing focus of what's really important. And I think that's a mistake. But to comment further on your points, I think BEE has benefited a certain hyper minority of previously disadvantaged people who became the directors of companies, and not just one company. You see men and women who've become directors of multiple different companies, dozens. And I've come across this in my line of work as a counselor. In certain investigations that we've done, we've come across individuals who are directors of hundreds of companies, or they sit on the boards of hundreds of companies, and they rake in huge amounts of money, and they live in the top 1% of the 1%. They're extremely wealthy, and this wealth isn't trickling down as it was intended to. I think if we just look at our cities, it's pure evidence of this. Our cities are quite wealthy. Johannesburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, they have wealthy suburbs of people of many different races. But as soon as we go beyond those areas, these further on that point, these people live, lives that are even better than the first world. And that's a criticism that's made of South Africa, is our top rich 1% or even 10% live higher lifestyles than even those in the West. But we don't have a supporting middle class. We have the extremely wealthy and we have the extremely poor. And if we were going to design policies that really look to uplift those people from the poorest of the poor into a strong middle class, we need to look at other ideas, such as lowering our tax rates, making our country conducive to international business, to developing manufacturing sector. Going back to just how our cities look, we've got extremely wealthy suburbs, and then we've got squatter camps. And then outside of our cities, there's extreme poverty. There's no wealth generation. There's no income. Our small towns are extremely poor. The Western Cape and Gauteng are the only two provinces in South Africa that actually contribute to the national tax revenue. Beyond that, every other province is a drain. If we had a strong middle class, it wouldn't be the case, because each town would support its own economy. But that's not the case. Our cities is where all the money is, and that's where it is. And BEE only encourages that. We're not encouraging a trickle down of wealth. There's a few, and this is of people of all races, hyper wealthy people, and then there's the poor.
Vasily?
Let me thanks for that contribution. Let me start at the end, Donald. I don't agree with the view that the BEE how the example was used with the gap between the rich and the poor. I don't agree. I agree to some extent that in the process there might have been those that abused it and benefited, ended up in being in many companies, like how other South Africans who have been participating in the economy are in many companies. But if you look, I can imagine now. I'm listening to Mark. I can imagine that he does not agree with the recently signed Employment Equity Amendment Act, where it even encourages the minister it empowers the minister to issue compliance certificates to employers, because our reading is that the reason why your affirmative action has not really been that effective in addressing the inequalities of the past is that there has been a organized resistance and gatekeeping to ensure, because there's no other way. I'm not getting it even from Mark. There's no other way that you are going to be able to put Black people at the very same playing field in terms of the economy with their white counterparts if government does not intervene. There's just no way, because these people were systematically out of many years segregated and not allowed to participate in the economy. So there's no way. But we on our side, we welcome the act. We believe that the amendments, and we call for the speedily implementation thereof, because we believe that it's going to address where we would have had problems in terms of our employment equity targets. It's mainly in the private sector and in the Western Cape. And that's why we are not really closing that gap. And also, government is not doing enough to ensure that they are sustainable economic opportunities that are given to those who are previously disadvantaged. And when I say Black, I don't mean your Africans. I say all of those who were previously disadvantaged because of the color of their skin. That was the reality of our country, and we can't then just not talk about race. And it must not be viewed that when you talk about race, you are raising it. If you are saying Black, you are raising it to contest or drive away your white counterparts. But it is about how do we level the playing fields? How do we ensure that even in a province like the Western Cape, where the dynamics are not as those of national, but how do we ensure that, for example, your colored people in the Western Cape are prioritized? Yes, those who are fit for purpose for any particular positions, but are prioritized to ensure that they become part of the economy. And the more you broaden it to different groups, the more you are going to be able to achieve what Mark is talking about. So I think that, because even this talks about the national minimum wage, and we've seen how your FF plus, your TAs have really not been. We have not heard them. Let me say, I have not heard them going out and saying that let's ensure there is implementation of this national minimum wage, especially in your agricultural space, where the people who work the land are the least paid people with very, very poor and disturbing socio-economic conditions. They are often victims of evictions in the very same farms where they would have worked for many years and different generations of their families, ensuring that those farms produce what they produce and have the economic status that they have. So we have to be deliberate, Donald. There's no other way about it. We can't just think there's going to be a level playing field without making it.
Musili, just quickly, one of our viewers asked, BEE or affirmative action has been a gateway for cater deployment. I think you said it might have been. Some people might have been benefited. You used the word might. So, for example, Patrice Motsepe, did he not benefit from BEE, Ramaphosa?
Yeah, Motsepe has benefited, and there's nothing wrong about it. It was a program of government, and it's good that they've benefited. We see the good work that Patrice Motsepe does in our sports. We see how his entities contribute to the development of young people in different areas. You know, we would have hoped that we were going to have many, because I saw quite recently Motsepe was contributing in January. There were issues of learners that don't have that can afford, you know, to pay their fees. We saw how he contributed and gave these universities money. So they were people that benefit. I don't know what is catered deployment, because we just, for example, appointed Tim Harris as a tourism. Is that cadre deployment? He's not the cadre of the African National Congress, but is someone who has experience. We've seen how he has been leading Westgro. He has experience in the space. So and we want people to move with us. You know, we have passed the stage where we have made mistakes as the ANC. And to some extent, people were saying you are doing wrong, and we didn't listen, you know. But reality is that we have passed that stage. We are on the roll again. We hence these policies. You know, there's got to be some radical program to ensure that all people of South Africa, regardless of their color or skin, participate, have a fair chance of participating in the economy.
Yeah, Mark?
So that will happen through these programs of affirmative action.
Right. Thank you, Musili. Mark?
Thanks, Musili. I must disagree with a few things. So if we're going to look at what the ANC government has done so far with its affirmative action programs, it clearly hasn't worked. And so if we're going to talk about the bill, any bill that plans on taking that further is not going to work as well. What we've seen is Black-owned businesses actually decrease over the past number of years. So that's Black-owned businesses. That's the end goal. That's what you want. And it's decreased over the past couple of years, despite more strict affirmative action rules, as well as Black employment. Unemployment has increased. The problem with overarching race-based affirmative action laws is that they totally address the wrong problem, and they come about it the wrong way. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to take, let's say if you want to distribute the wealth, let's say the white-owned wealth, it's picture it as a pie. It's one pie. So if you want to distribute that wealth from amongst the population, that's 10% of the wealth. Because let me give it to you plainly. Only a very small percentage of the white population have all the wealth. It's not all of us. So you have a very small percentage of an already small population that owns the wealth. That pie, you want to try and take all the money from that pie and divide it equally amongst the population. There's not enough money there to even take care of the white folk on their own. You want to have an economy that's conducive to creating more pies. This is the problem with affirmative action laws, such as BEE. You're trying to take all of the money, the small amount of money that there is, and divide it equally amongst a very large population. It's just not going to work. There's not enough money. It's going to run out, and you're going to end up destroying every single business in this country. And if we're going to talk about cadre deployment or top level positions awarded to previously disadvantaged people by BEE, well, all of these individuals, I can't say all of them, obviously, but most of the individuals are benefiting from white-owned businesses in some sense or another. If they were made a 51% shareholder of a white business due to BEE policy, they're benefiting from a white business. So now if you start to take that away, even they're going to lose their financial income. So I don't think, and this is my very personal opinion, I don't think you're going to see a very serious drive from the very top of the ANC to end the status quo in South Africa because their own people are benefiting from it. They're benefiting from it. Yeah, they're all benefiting from white-owned business. What you want to do is create more black-owned businesses naturally. You can't force it. You can't grab somebody and say, you are now in charge of a major manufacturing plant. You need to have a economy that grows and uplift its people. You need services, demand, supply, all of that needs to be in place. Currently, we're plagued by load shedding and many other problems, a high tax rate, a shrinking tax base. We're in the spiral of disaster. So the more the government struggles to collect revenue, the more it's going to keep on increasing taxes, the more businesses are going to close. And guess what? The people who suffer the most from businesses closing are previously disadvantaged folks, because they create the bulk of the workforce, and so they're the ones who become more unemployed. In order to stop that cycle of economic death, the government needs to take some serious risks or some serious measures, such as cutting spending, drastically cutting spending. And yes, by cutting spending, they would have to cut staff at the state-owned entities. Now, this is a problem, obviously, because unemployment is going to shoot up. But by cutting spending, they can then cut taxes, and they can start passing legislation, as is their constitutional obligation, to induce business growth in South Africa and investment. Foreigners don't want to invest in South Africa because we're sitting with strict race laws, such as BEE, that require them to sacrifice the majority of their companies to some cadre or another. And they don't want to do that. I can give a number of examples that I've uncovered at local government level where really good overseas investment deals have fallen through the floor because of strict demands made by local officials. So we need to totally change that. We need to make it so that people want to build their businesses here, and that'll create growth. We have a lot of potential in this country. We've got very fertile farmland and a lot of natural resources. I think if we're going to talk about white-owned farms, it's also only a small percentage of the available land in this country. I don't know, when last have you driven from Bloemfontein to Johannesburg? It's vast. South Africa is about the same size as Western Europe, double the size of Ukraine. And Ukraine is a big country that exports a lot of food. So there's way more potential for growth. We should stop focusing on trying to split up this very small pie and look at creating more pies. Thanks.
And Mark, do you think naturally that will solve the problem of a lot of inequalities, some would say created by apartheid? That black people are now unequal poor. If we just left the system, economic growth as it were, we created economic growth. Naturally, black people will rise to the top. Is that sort of what you're suggesting? I think you should just
Yeah, so the vast bulk of the South African population is black people, so they're the first who's going to benefit from vast economic growth. If 10 million new jobs appear on the South African market, those 10 million jobs are going to be taken by black folk. If as we stand today, the majority of the white population is employed, think of the growth potential that we have. And that's growth from the previously disadvantaged side of things. These people will benefit the most. If we're looking at factory jobs, these jobs don't require university degrees or high level of education. And it's enough to sustain a family, the income provided by these jobs, even though it might not be a huge salary. It's something, and it's a starting point. And people can work themselves up through the system and then afford to put their child through school. And then their child is in a better position than they were to thrive.
Great. Musuli? You're muted.
No,
There we
thanks,
go.
thank you, guys. Look, I agree with with Mark around issues of ensuring that there's economic growth, and but what I don't understand is the perception that you can't have economic growth while also trying to transform the sector in terms of this reality that you were reflecting on, Donald, because as he was saying earlier, that there are black people that would have gained shareholding in these white companies, and they gained that shareholding, and those people were prepared to do that because there's a particular project they wanted from government, and government. That's why I really celebrate the act that has just been signed by the president, because you would need those certificates in order for you to continue to have contracts. Those certificates around your employment equity at targets, because reality is that even he talks about agricultural land. I although I was born here in the Western Cape, and I attended my schooling, everything here in the Western Cape. We do have a home in the Eastern Cape, and if you go around there, you end up realizing that people are farming so that they eat these things again, than for business mostly, because there's no market. That's the reality. And one thing that I've noticed in business is the element of trust. There's an issue of trust that is built in relationships in business, and because there were certain people that were participating. Because you can't tell me now that in the agricultural industry in the Western Cape that contributes about 55 billion rands to the GDP of the country, you want to tell me that there are no black people who have the requisite skills of building a business that can be a leading exporter in that particular space till this date, without government forcing it, because government has not forced it at that level. So are you saying naturally now, after 30 years, there's no black person who could have been able to build a business in that space? And that can't be true. But the reality is that we need to see how do we, as government, intervene in that space and ensure that equal opportunities are given to people to participate in the space, because some of these companies, they've been built for many years. They have these relations with outside market, even outside the country, and they come out of having been in business for some time. So there has to be that deliberate effort. And you go to the Western Cape. The reason why I was saying that the Western Cape, the Western Cape government is part of those who have been resisting these attempts by the national government of the ANC to transform our economy. If you go and look in their statistics, you would see that the workforce of the Western Cape, still in your top level leadership, 58% of your top management of your workforce in the Western Cape are white males, and white women is only 15%, and your Africans 3%, your coloreds 9%. And we say that must be left as is. It can't be correct. There must be an intervention, because this is not only looking at race, by the way, the issue of affirmative action. It's also looking at the question of gender, because as black women would have suffered because there were women in the past and continue in a patriarchal society. Even white women did suffer because jobs were set aside, opportunities were mostly taken by men. So it's not only looking at your issue of race, it's looking at your issue of gender also. So it's about addressing the injustices of the past while you ensure that you create an environment for business to thrive and for the economy to grow. I think you can do that while transforming. I don't believe, unless if people want to have all the profits unto themselves. I think you can still grow the economy while you transform and ensure that there's equal participation by all people, regardless of their gender and their race.
Musuli, just quickly, because you were obviously a member during the sitting when Peter Maree said that the ANC, let's be liberal, that the ANC are foreigners in the Western Cape. What did you think of that statement? Because I think it's somewhat, in the context of this, it's relevant.
No, it was a very, for me at first, I thought it's a joke, but only when he had to repeatedly say it, when he was asked to apologize, he again said that. And I was asking the very same question. I was born in the Western Cape. I was born in Paarl. And this is a place I call home. And how do I then become a foreigner in this particular place? So it's part of those things. The reality is that we are still haunted by the realities of our past, and we need to work together. That's the position of the ANC. We're not confused. We have no interest of chasing anyone outside of this country because of a particular race. We know how people of South Africa have integrated. There's much work that would have been done from 1994 to integrate different societies. So we think that we can only build from here and make this democracy make sense to everyone, not only because they can vote, but let it be reflected, in their livelihoods. And we need to put our heads. That's why I said I'm happy to be part of this discussion, because I think we need to continuously engage and see. We're not going to agree all the time, but how do we build this nation and ensure that those who are going to live here after us no longer engages on these debates around the issue. One real would want a time where we don't talk about race. We just talk about the people of South Africa. But that will only be a place where everyone feels that we are equally represented. We can equally participate. We are enabled to participate equally in the economy.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Great. Musuli, Mark, Dr. Surgeon.
A doctor of politics, perhaps, not medicine, thank goodness. A spin doctor, maybe. I also just want to add to what Melissa was saying, is that it's great we can have a discussion, because although we might have differing ideas, I think our end goal is the same, which is a prosperous nation. So it's good that we compare notes on the topic. To answer Melusi's first point, why should let's say the majority of farmers in the Western Cape, or farms in the Western Cape, are white-owned farms? Where is the room for black businessmen in that space? But I would throw the question right back and say, why would a black businessman or woman want to make the financial investment and purchase land and start a farm, or any business for that matter? If he sees a gap in the market and wants to launch a new product or service, why should someone make that massive financial step, or that big leap in our economy? Our economy is not growing at a healthy rate. So anybody at this stage who makes such an investment is taking a huge financial risk. I wouldn't, especially with all the problems we're dealing with, such as load shedding. Our economy isn't growing fast enough to support the products that these people would potentially supply. There's no demand for extra services at this stage. And by services, I don't mean government services. There's a huge demand for government services, and that's another one of the many issues. But in a situation where there's little to no economic growth, adding more suppliers to the system without equal demand is not conducive to economic growth. Furthermore, you've got the national government, the state-owned enterprises, the police, the military, the health system. All of these are essentially Black-owned entities. And over the past 25 years, they've not readdressed the issues of the past. Sure, they have soaked up a lot of unemployment into their ranks by overemploying. And this is also a very dangerous thing to do, because when the government realized it hadn't made the correct economic decisions to make the economy grow, our economy at best was growing at about 4%. There's other African countries who are leaps and bounds ahead of us. This is just a side note. Rwanda's growing at about 10% per year, and they don't have any BEE or such laws. They're doing this naturally by making their country conducive to economic growth, by lowering taxes and encouraging foreign investment. And its citizens are benefiting richly as a result. But going back to the point, in South Africa, we never made such decisions. When the ANC took power, they never made the decision to grow the economy by lowering taxes and making business easy to do in South Africa. And business has grown, but in a very small part of our society, such as Johannesburg, Pretoria, and the Western Cape, and some parts of Durban North. And that's about it. So when we live in the cities, things are great. We see incredible development. So it looks like a first world nation. We've got shopping centers, businesses, we've got jobs. But everywhere else, it's an absolute disaster. And instead of our government making the decision to encourage growth in every other sector of our economy, except for that of our major cities, they introduced race-based laws, and our state-owned enterprises made the wrong decision of trying to soak up unemployment by overhiring in their respective businesses. So Eskom overhires, SAA overhired. All of these state-owned enterprises tried to soak up the unemployment. This was Pravin Gordhan's plan. You can see it after 2006. All the graphs turn red when that happens. Because what happens is these state-owned enterprises don't have the financial income to support their staff complement. And as a result, they have to now become bailed out by the national government because they don't have enough income to support their expenses. They get bailed out. The government loses all of its spending money on bailing out large state-owned enterprises. So what does it do? It raises the taxes once again. Our business shrink. Unemployment increases. The state-owned enterprises panic, create more employment opportunities within their ranks, require further bailouts, and you can see how the cycle of doom begins. So if I was the South African government, and I said this earlier, if you're gonna try and readdress the inequalities of the past, you have to open up a whole new aspect of the South African economy, which is everything not based in the cities. So we've got 3 or 4 major, let's say 5 major metros in South Africa, but we've got towns outside of these metros who have been totally neglected and have fallen into decline. Naturally, if we had an economy that was conducive to growth, these towns would have grown alongside the cities, and then employment opportunities and business opportunities would have grown within these towns. Our cities are at maximum capacity. I'm a councillor in the city of Tshwane. We can't take any more people. Everyone comes to the cities because there's no opportunities elsewhere. And there's nothing we can do for them. We cannot provide them with basic services because they don't have a big enough tax revenue to do so. And I think at one stage we had like 7,000 new shacks established a week. I think that was the statistic I saw, which is a horrifying figure. Not horrifying because we have a problem with the people moving to our city, but horrifying because we cannot provide them with basic services. And they go and live in areas that are conducive to flooding, and they're beyond the urban sprawl. So they're far away from any existing infrastructure that we could possibly even look to expanding. So it's a major issue where our cities seem to be this hub of jobs and money, and there's no effort to change that situation. I'll go back to that previous point where if we had a growing economy and there was real room for development and for new businesses to sprout up, even new farms, that would have been happening at the local level. Not everything can stem from our cities. They're already at maximum capacity.
What would you say to this point that 58%, if I got that figure right, of the Vryheidsonplus in the Western Cape are white? Is that relevant? Is that important? Is that something you can speak to?
Well, that's only relevant if you're looking at the policies, internal policies of the Freedom Front Plus. And I'll sell us a little bit here. Yeah, we're a minority party, and we're a party that stands for minority rights. So that does not only include white folk. Yes, we are a minority, but the Indian population and the colored populations are also considered minorities in this country. So we do as much as we can as a political party to further the interests of these minority groups. And to that point, I'm going to say, controversially, this doesn't mean we advocate for policies that would benefit these people, such as affirmative action policies. We don't advocate for affirmative action policies that would benefit white folk, colored folk, or Indian folk. Our goal is to protect their rights. And currently, those rights are being infringed by affirmative action laws such as BEE in South Africa.
Usuli?
No, thanks. That was a lot. Look, I agree. On taking economic opportunities to other parts of the country. I think we have also been raising that here in the Western Cape as to how do we move from the city and start to develop areas because you have opportunities in Beaufort West. I think there are opportunities for the future. If you were to check in relation with what is happening even in the Northern Cape, where you would have your even your SKAs, your different science projects that are run in those parts of the country. So how do you take economic opportunities to those areas? I agree with that. But where I differ is for the first time, Donald and Mark, that I hear that because I've never had the FF Plus going out and talk about an issue around the for example, crime in the Western Cape affects certain no, let me not say that. Let me not say it affects a certain group, but I'm saying high levels of crime are in particular areas in the Western Cape, and those areas, it's your areas of your colored people and your what you call black areas, and we have seen how differently they respond to crime that happens in those areas and crime that happens in the farm areas. We've seen that, and it stands for that particular grouping, and no one else. It's a spin. I think I agree with you, Mark, when you said you're a spin doctor. I don't think that you really represent other consequences than the wide consequence, because even how this PE eating is driven here to say that, because PEE and the black in the PEE is not only for your Africans, it's all the previously disadvantaged people. And there are people who have benefited from BEE projects and are running sustainable companies today. And there are people who are black and went into white companies, got shareholding, and they've contributed in the development of those particular companies. So there must not be a picture that is painted that BEE is about going and take a share on someone else's company. It's government saying, for example, if it's government contracts, it's government saying you must be a this level BEE, this transformed for you to be able to get the project. And in what went wrong with BEE, it's interesting that those who are against BEE do not talk about how these companies have also used what we call fronting, and take other black people. You would find them, they are just fronting for these companies because they want a particular BEE status. So I'm saying the problem we've had in South Africa is that the private sector is not pulling in the same with the same level of effort as government is doing. Government in South Africa has been left. There's a time I always reference now, is that how amazing it was to see private sector and government during the hectic times of COVID-19, how we've seen the partnership, in terms of responding to COVID-19, even when there were disagreements between public and private sector in terms of how we must move forward, businesses being closed and business complaining and all of that. But there was that sense of collaboration, which we do not find when we have to address the social ills of our country, which are caused by the widening gap of inequality, because inequality breeds social ills. And it's part of those reasons why you would have government using its own institutions and even going to an extent of wanting to be a biggest employer and having many people employed, as Mark was narrating earlier on. It's because private sector has not been assisting, equally to ensure that we address the imbalances of the past. It's firstly profits. That has been the case. That it's first profits, and in reality, these profits go to pockets of individual families than assisting the country. Yes, there are economic challenges that we have. Government has been speaking about them. Government has been presenting plans of how we are going to turn things around. And we see now some of the promises that were made by government happening. There was an issue of the railway, the trains that have not been working for some time, but we see how government is starting to bring back the train on the line. So there are challenges, as I have said, that we have made mistakes as a government, and at times we took a bit a while to respond to the mistakes that we had made. But I think we are moving forward. Sorry about that.
No problem. Musili, just quickly to just understand your point, you're saying it's about profits. That's one of the main reasons why affirmative action has not succeeded. Is there another way how you see private companies operating without profits? I'm just a bit confused about that point.
No. I'm saying it's just about profits. That is why when there's an issue of let's say there's a crisis of COVID-19 that affects businesses, the first thing that your businesses will do, go retrench. How do we shift this and we've seen it happening. We've seen many people losing jobs that they could have not lost if we had a patriotic business industry that would be willing at times to take certain profits than having the interest of always maximizing profits. If it's always about
sorry,
profit, then there's a
Masudi,
problem.
I'm just confused. Can you make a profit and be patriotic?
Look, you can. I believe you can make a profit and be patriotic. That's why I was making an example that there are companies that went on to retrench people that could have not been retrenched, but it was solely done to protect profits of the company. But if you are patriotic enough, you will be able to at times take the economic the negative economic hardships that we have and protect the workers that you have,
Even if
because
that means
those
you go
workers.
bankrupt.
No, I'm not saying that. That's why I'm saying there must be that balance that is struck.
Okay.
It must not always, because even these workers, in reality, is that they are part of the workforce. That and I'm not saying they must keep workers even at the stage where they can't afford them, but it must not be the first solution every time there's an economic issue or the company is not doing well. The first thing that happens, let's go and retrench workers. I don't see patriotism in that.
So there needs to be more mediation, especially with labor unions, if I understand you correctly.
Yes, correctly. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that private sector could play a huge role and not leave it up to government, because I don't understand that when it suits the private sector in South Africa in its current form, it says it's the one that employs. Government does not create jobs. But we see we have seen many times. We have not seen businesses saying, "Hey, we're doing well. Let's employ more and more people." It will rather be listed as part of the profits. We have doubled our profits and all that smiles going to the bank. But it's not about the country. So private business in South Africa needs to really work on its attitude towards building this nation.
Great.
And
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and some of them you would find that they are even multi national entities, with no real interest. That's why every time there's a problem in South Africa, there's business that says we're going to go. Once there's a problem, no, we're going to pack, we're going to close and leave. It shows that there's no allegiance to the country. It's just about profit, and that needs to change. And maybe a government needs to work faster in transforming this economy, so that we have people that have the capabilities, have the skills to run businesses, but are also patriotic to this country.
Absolutely. Okay, gentlemen, I see we're running out of time. I think Mark needs to go invade Russia, or he needs to go sleep. I don't know. But yeah, we're gonna don't worry, I'm gonna give you a closing statement. The summary I see, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and you can correct my summary as long as you want to, but the summary I see is from Mark's side is that we don't need as much state intervention, especially on the issue of race, as Masuli sees. We don't need to get race involved in state intervention. Mark, is that a correct summary of this debate tonight? We don't need to get race involved in state intervention?
I'll only answer if you allow me a closing statement. Yeah, if the state is going to make laws, it needs to make laws that are conducive to that encourage economic growth, not laws that aim on taking money from one group and giving it to another. That's not going to work. Can I make my closing statement? Thank you. So there were a number of statements that Musuli made, which I would like to respond on. The first one being crime and white folk only looking out for their own in their own areas, and that's absolutely correct. We're a party that stands for doing it by yourself, improving your own neighborhood, improving your house, and then improving your neighborhood, and then improving your town. So in the predominantly white neighborhoods, you're going to find predominantly white members forming part of the neighborhood watch. What you can't expect is us to go out of our homes into somebody else's home and keep them safe as well. And I'm going to say something controversial again. If the colored communities in the Western Cape want to uplift themselves, or they want to be uplifted, they need to do it themselves. They need to look at the core problems which are afflicting their neighborhoods: drugs, alcoholism, crime, fatherlessness. These issues are critical. They need to sort these out, and their lives will improve. We cannot go there as a political party and say, we will do everything for you, we're going to help you, because that's not going to solve their problem. That just, that's not going to work. They need to do it themselves, but they also need an economy around them that allows them to grow out of the situation that they're in. So we also take sympathy with them. We know unemployment is a massive issue. And so naturally, these things start to occur: alcoholism, drug use, gangsterism, fatherlessness, because the more divided, the more stressed our communities become, the more they start to look out for for themselves only. So that's my comment there. We're a party that stands up for the rights of minority groups, but we're not a party that's going to intervene on their behalf. They need to take the baton and improve their own lives, and then what the government needs to do is step in and provide an economy that allows them to grow. Second point that I want to comment on is the issue of the private sector. How can the private sector pick up the ball when it's strangled by taxes and by issues such as load shedding and a shrinking economy? It's a tall order. But I'm also going to make an argument and say, well, the private sector in South Africa is pretty much already diversified and transformed. If we look at all the biggest conglomerates, the banks, the construction companies, everything, they already comply by the government's BEE standards, and they encourage it. If we look at what Dis-Chem said, they make public statements such as that. So I would make argument that the large-scale private sector is already pulling its weight by government standards, and there's a lot of people that benefit from that. A lot of BEE deployees who benefit from that system. So why would they change it? Why would they put their livelihoods at risk by sacrificing their own incomes to soak up the unemployment rate? These are BEE deployees such as ANC cadres, politicians, and their families who've gotten involved in these schemes. I know of a situation, and white people are also just as guilty at this, and I won't say where and when, but of a white-owned company which fronts as about 20 or 30 different black-owned companies, and it reaps in all the profits. So it tenders out as these small companies, and then all the work comes to the main fellow, and he reaps all the profits. Now, this is wrong as well, because he's using a system to benefit himself, a system that's meant to benefit others, to benefit himself, and he's actually acting illegally. Now, these people, although it's a white-owned business, I have zero respect for, and when the information comes out, we'll take action and we'll prosecute. So a lot of people are benefiting from the system that has been created, this BEE system, to profiteer and to benefit themselves. It's the BEE system that allows for this to happen. It's not that businesses are going out and being conniving and finding own ways to loot money. It's the system. When you have procurement regulations, such as we do have in South Africa for local government and government, BEE companies profiteer. and they're not all Black-owned companies, they're not all white-owned companies, but they're using the conditions set out by the government to profiteer themselves and to loot as much money as they can from the system. I think that's about it, Donald. I've made my 2 cents. I shan't rant on anymore on that point.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark. It seems to me, Busuli, the argument is we should get race out of state policy, whether it's apartheid. Today, it's not been successful. It's actually it's harmed us more than done any good. A closing statement from your side, please.
No, I don't agree with that statement, Donald. I think affirmative action in South Africa has addressed some of the things that we would have intended it to address, such as transforming the workforce, especially in the public service. We've seen that. I think where I agree is that we might have lacked in the monitoring and ensuring that we protect this system against the abuse by others. But I just want to, as my closing remark, talk about this issue of crime again. And say that those who live in the high med precincts, it's not that they are comfortable with the environment that they live in, but it is the reality that these are social ills. These are socio-economic ills because people don't work in those areas. The people who have companies, even in the malls that exist in those areas, live in the leafy suburbs of all these provinces, and they don't contribute there in those areas in efforts and community efforts to fight crime. They would rather contribute where they live. Hence, you would find that because in the areas that Mark is talking about, there are blacks who stay there. They are colored people, they are Indian people who stay there, and they contribute also in fighting crime in those areas. More often than not, in those areas, they have more policing resources at the level, of securities and all this than these other areas. And of course, the people from Manenberg, people from Kailicha, the people from Delft would not have the economic power to implement what is being implemented in the other areas. These people from these areas, they are involved. You will be shocked. They patrol at night in these gang-infested areas. So they do try to uplift themselves, but the reality is that they can't afford, and it's government who must then intervene and use affirmative action to ensure that we uplift these people. It's not about taking money from another person to the other. It's about ensuring that more people participate in the economy and benefit. South Africa stands to benefit if we were to successfully unite its people behind its diversity, and we need to be practical about that and not just say it in words. We need to have laws that will ensure that whether others, like, they're very, and I think I must say this, Mark, Donald, as I close, there are many progressive white people in South Africa and progressive businesses in South Africa, but reality is that there are others who don't want to share. And how do we as government ensure that we put up systems in place to ensure that we not unite the people? So these laws, we might not see them today, but they are meant to unite the people of South Africa in their diversity. Thank you very much for the debate, and thanks to Mark for the inputs that you would have made, and to you, Donald, for the invite. Thank you.
This has been so fantastic, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Very good natured, much more calm and casual than the previous debates. I appreciate this very much. And I think we made a lot of leeway in terms of what every side stood for and how perhaps we can compromise in the future. This is what freedom of speech is all about. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. I hope Madrid wins today. Thank you.
Madrid.